and a better life. And they are asking everything to be heard. The human rights situation in Iran has been severe for years, particularly the appalling pace of executions and the arbitrary detention of human rights defenders. But we are witnessing now is of different magnitude. Citizens demanding rights are met with batons and bullets. The Iranian authorities have built their rule on uncompromising repression. By their own admission, thousands of people have been killed in recent weeks. To conceal the scale of repression, the authorities have imposed a nationwide communications blackout, aimed to prevent the international community from witnessing what is happening. Yet, the images reach us despite the blackout, and they leave no doubt about the brutality of the response. Violence against peaceful protesters is unacceptable, always and everywhere. Honourable members, the brutal suppression of protests is merely the latest example of the deterioration of Iran's actions. Iran's illicit nuclear activities, its military support to Russia, support to terrorist organisations across the Middle East, hybrid attacks on EU soil, and the arbitrary detention of EU citizens. The EU already has sweeping sanctions on Iran in place, targeting those responsible for human rights abuses, nuclear proliferation activities, and Tehran's support for Russia's war in Ukraine. Today, we are proposing new export restrictions on components that Iran can use for the production of drones and missiles. This will further limit Iran's ability to feed Russia's continued aggression against Ukraine. In addition to that, we are working on new sanctions response on Iran's authorities' brutal repression of protesters and to support the Iranian people's legitimate demands. We are actively examining what further measures can be taken. In parallel, our diplomatic engagement is firm and clear. On the 13th of January, my diplomatic service summoned the Iranian ambassador, and most of the member states did as well. Iran must immediately release all those individuals unjustly detained, address grievances through dialogue, not repression, restore access to internet, and stop the violence. The actions of Iranian authorities have broader implications for regional security. Their threats to target US forces in the region risk further deepening tensions. I'm in regular contact with the partners in the region, and their concern is profound. The European Union remains firmly committed to peace, security and stability in the Middle East. All parties must abide by international law and exercise restraint. The risk of miscalculation is higher than ever. The brave Iranians who have taken to the streets are not asking for the impossible. They are demanding fundamental human rights, dignity and meaningful change. And we stand firmly by them. Thank you.
Grazie, Vicepresidente.
Thank you very much indeed, Vice President. We'll make a start on the debate, and I call, first of all, Mr. Lopez Istúriz.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and to the High Representative. I come to talk about a resolution of the European Parliament on the Iran, and I can say that the left and the right are all united in one cause, the cause of denouncing the terrible activities that are taking place in Iran. So let's leave all of the fanatics outside, even those who turn up with fleets in the Mediterranean. Ultimately, there is not always the same value in opposing the Iranian regime, and I don't really see the same value given across the board. We have a regime in Iran which is putting people in prison, which is killing people, which is financing activities in Gaza, and which is involved in parties in the European Union, including in my country, in Spain, High Representative. And so we have this resolution, not because it's fashionable, not for any reason other than because we have high principles. We have spent a long time talking about Iran's nuclear blackmail and the oppression of women and minorities and the support for terrorism, the attacks on democratic residents, even including within Europe. So, as friends of Iran, we know what we have to do. We have to condemn the repression being carried out by the regime without any ambiguity. We need to take action against their terrorist activities. We need to increase the number of sanctions against those responsible, and we need to impose democracy in Iran. That unites nearly all of the groups within this European Parliament, and I do hope that we will see a positive result in the vote. There is no ideological controversy. We are defending democracy and the principle of liberty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maniat.
Honourable members, Commissioner, in recent weeks we have seen thousands of Iranians take to the streets to claim their rights and dignities. The mullah's regime enacted a brutal crackdown. Thousands were killed and many more thrown in jail. A complete blackout has been imposed on internet connections. Now, these protests did not stem from foreign interference, but rather represent the will of the Iranian people. Claims that we saw during an earlier Women Life Freedom movement. The regime can do nothing to stem the demands and protests of people facing shortages of medicines, highly expensive cost of living. The people of Iran must be able to decide their own fate, free from foreign interference, but we can stand shoulder to shoulder with them. We should do everything within our power to explore diplomatic channels, and the Revolutionary Guard must be banned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bardella.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President, Vice President, dear colleagues. The situation in Iran tells us an obvious and simple truth, and that this is a regime which hangs on only as a result of repression and fear. We have seen a wave of arbitrary arrests, torture and executions. Women, students and political opponents are persecuted, not because they've committed crimes, but because they are calling for something which people should never be denied, which is freedom. We have a regime which stifles freedom. We have a serious state of affairs and also a role in which government sows terror. They are not only the executioners of the Iranian people, but also the principal supporters of international terrorism. They support Islamist organizations which sow terror and barbarism throughout the world. France has paid a heavy price. We have had direct terrorist attacks, and we also see political pressure and the arbitrary detention of our nationals. None of that should ever be downplayed nor forgotten. Iran has played a central role in destabilizing the Middle East, in Syria and in Yemen and elsewhere. It seeks to stoke conflict and to make entire nations more fragile. We have to fight against it. That is a demand and our responsibility. It would be quite wrong to see Iran as just a regime, because above and beyond this oppressive system, there is a civilization, a people which dates back thousands of years, a people which has had the courage to resist, which aspires to freedom as well as to a democratic future. And that future is neither something which is naive or abstract, rather it is something that we can now clearly see. And we will be faithful to our values if we call for that. It is something which a proud free nation deserves. Thank you very much indeed. I now call Mr. Procaccini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. While we are debating in this chamber, in the streets and universities of Tehran, the uprising of young Iranians is being brutally suppressed. The Ayatollah regime is brutally repressing yet another generation thirsting for freedom. In just a few weeks, the numbers of victims have become unbearable. Thousands of people of all ages have been killed, including many children. This has even become a horrific business for the Basij militiamen who are demanding 700 million tomans, around €6,000, from the families of the protesters killed in order to return the bodies of their loved ones. Otherwise, they're thrown into mass graves. For us European conservatives, siding with the people in revolt is not an act of external influence, foreign interference, as the regime's propaganda claims. It is a moral necessity rather than a political one. Others, however, believe that we should not concern ourselves with this because it is none of our business. These are often the very same people who set our cities ablaze during the Gaza crisis. We've seen Iranian women challenging the regime by uncovering their heads, but we don't then see the same demonstrations of solidarity that we saw on those other occasions. No flotillas on their way, no occupied universities, no colourful T-shirts here. Perhaps because the Ayatollahs hate Israel and the West? Perhaps because the Ayatollahs are friends with Russia, China, Cuba or Venezuela? An old Persian proverb comes to mind. There are three kinds of enemies. Your enemy, your enemy's friends, and your friends' enemies. In any case, Europe cannot stand by and watch this horror unfold. Unprecedented political and diplomatic mobilization is needed. To the young people of Iran, I say, you are not alone. Your battle is also ours, and your freedom is the measure of our consistency. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole, prego onorevole.
Thank you. Mr. Grotius.
Thank you, Chair. Dear High Representative. Let's call things as they are. Italy, Spain and France are against putting the Islamic Iranian Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, on the EU terrorism list. Let's call things as they are. France, Spain and Italy say there are legal obstacles. Well, maybe murdering people inside Europe or funding several terrorist organizations or burning synagogues in Düsseldorf, maybe that's not enough. But surely unleashing chemical weapons on the Iranian population is, or killing many thousands of innocent civilians. Spain, Italy and France say they need a legal court order. Well, there is one, like in Düsseldorf. And please ask Israel, Saudi Arabia, United States, Canada, Bahrain, who have already designated IRGC as a terrorist organization, whether there was a diplomatic collapse. There wasn't. Can the High Representative formally acknowledge here today that it is these three countries, like the press is reporting constantly, in the Council, who are blocking to list the IRGC? Will the High Representative be on our side to sanction IRGC and expose their children and grandchildren who are studying here in Europe, enjoying our liberties, while their relatives are pouring chemical weapons over the heads of innocent, freedom-abiding Persians? Let's call things as they are. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole, prego onorevole Neumann.
Thank you, Ms. Neumann.
People in Iran are back on the streets because of poverty, because of repression, because they cannot survive like this. The regime responds with brutality beyond comprehension. They deliberately shoot peaceful protesters in the face. Thousands have been killed, many more injured, their faces turned into permanent warnings, a message written in blood. Do not dare to resist. Many families still wait for calls that never come. They don't know whether their loved ones returned home, vanished into prisons, or lied unnamed among the dead. Political prisoners have been cut off for weeks. The internet has been shut down to keep everything in the dark. This regime has lost every last inch of legitimacy. It is politically bankrupt, it is economically hollow, morally dead, it will fall. The only question is when, and how many more lives will it destroy before it does. Dear colleagues, it is our responsibility to shorten that timeline, and it is on Iranians to then decide what's next. I know this is not the usual toolbox, but nothing about this regime is normal. And compared to the risks that people take in the streets of Iran every day, what I'm asking for, High Representative, is very little. Designate the Revolutionary Guard as a terror organization. We know who is blocking. Spain, Italy and France. Dear colleagues, with your nice speeches, reach out to your governments, make them reconsider so we can do this by January 29. Fully enforce sanctions, not selectively, not symbolically, but completely. Expel Iranian diplomats who abuse their diplomatic privileges to spread disinformation and intimidate Iranians here in Europe. Why should we tolerate their repression on our soil any longer? Invest in technologies that bypass internet shutdowns. Autocrats are already learning from this. We must learn faster. And let us all together send an unmistakable sign to Tehran. Release the prisoners. Stop the executions. We will keep shining light where you seek darkness. This regime will fall. Let us all help it fall fast. Baroye Azadi.
Thank you very much. And while it's the custom to be more tolerant to the first round of political speakers, please don't abuse it, don't be too long. Now let me give the floor to Mr. Botenka, please.
Dear colleagues, High Representative, we've seen the images, and the inhumane killing of thousands of innocent Iranians is vile, shameful and unacceptable. And I hear your call for more sanctions. However, academic literature has offered a damning assessment of European and Western sanctions so far. Since the 1990s, Iran had developed very elaborate middle classes that became the backbone of a number of reform movements, like the so-called Green Movement. But since 2011, Western sanctions have crushed those middle classes, pushed millions into poverty, trapped students, destroyed local businesses, with food prices skyrocketing. And who benefited? The IRGC, the military revolutionary guard that had the networks to control trade, to manage import and infrastructure. So the sanctions weakened the forces of social change inside Iran, fostering inequality, corruption and the militarization of the Iranian economy. Now, sanctions do not birth democracy, sanctions breed chaos. Our double standards as well have been used against us as an argument. When the US-Israeli strikes killed Iranian civilians, this parliament failed to condemn. The Israelis announced covert operations in Iran, and we are not able to condemn. All of that plays into the card of the hardliners in Iran that claim the West cannot be trusted. Dear colleagues, Europe has claimed to stand for democracy in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. Where do those countries stand now? If we want to support the Iranian people, we need to stop punishing them. Lift sanctions that hurt the civilians in Iran, restore those cultural exchanges, and apply human rights consequently to all and everywhere. And we have the United Nations mechanisms to apply also to Iran. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to colleague Fröhlich on behalf of ESN.
Herr Präsident.
President, Iran is in a crisis. It's an economic crisis. The people are on the streets protesting. That's legitimate. They reject the religious leadership for this. They are angry for their economic problems, for a theocratic regime. That's a problem. But these protests are being fired up but from outside. There are a lot of dead, too many imprisoned. We don't know how many, but Iran deserves better times. But regime change operations from outside are not appropriate. They know that in Iran. That change has to come from within. In 1979, there was the revolution. Mossad had tried to have a coup, but from outside, you actually prevent proper protests from taking place. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, these are trying to prevent an escalation. You should listen to them. The regime change operations will just lead to waves of migrants, and they end up at our door.
I would like to inform you that there are loads and loads of requests for Catch the Eye, so I will have to be closing it. And since we are really running late on time today, I'm sad to say that I will not be able to accommodate all of the requests. We simply don't have the time, and I will have to start to be strict in terms of keeping the time. So let me give the floor to MEP McAllister, please.
Herr Präsident, Frau Hohe Vertreterin, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
President, High Representative, ladies and gentlemen. As the previous speakers already said, I should underline that the regime of the mullahs, since the revolution in 1979, represents a system of repression and terror. The human rights situation in Iran has been catastrophic for years. The number of executions is among the highest around the world. Today, Iran faces the most far-reaching social changes and protests since 1979. This is a unique opportunity to improve the situation of women and to move towards more freedom and democracy. What will be decisive is that the question of the future of the system is more open than ever before. However, what we have seen is mass violence in response. The mullahs are prepared to go beyond every limit to hold on to power. Unfortunately, the kind of sanctions we're imposing are not enough. They don't impress anybody, least of all the mullahs. The hope that to use nuclear threats to get through negotiations was not worked. Now it is time to use all of the instruments at our disposal. The Revolutionary Guard should finally be listed as what they are, which is as a terrorist organization.
Thank you. Our next speaker is our colleague Annunziata. Please take the floor.
Dear colleague, in recent months we have heard in this room very often many accusations about how slow and incapable of being strong and reactive EU has been. Maybe we have been like this, but I think things are changing. On Iran, it seems to me that we have been swiftly reacted. So this is the right moment for, making our point, which are, I think, are three. First, strong, restrictive sanctions to isolate the regime. Second, show solidarity on the part of the EU to the brave people of Iran by creating an international mechanism that investigates and makes accountable the human rights violation. We need to be, at the end, we need to be very clear on the issue of regime change. I must tell you that I'm a strongly believer in the fact that the future of Iran lies exclusively in the hand of the Iranian people. So I think that we just came from a resolution, from negotiated resolution on those issues. Most of the people that participate to the group, you have already here, they're still in this room. All these points are in this resolution that has been also reached with fairness, with discussion, but with determination to immediate reacting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Terch.
President, Ms. Kallas. In the first 5 years, 10,000 opposition people were killed by the Khomeini regime. This has now been doubled to 20,000 with the internet cut off so that people don't see the corpses mounting up. It's a failed, murderous regime. And shamefully, the EU has helped the Islamic Republic thus far. Mogherini, Borrell, helping Ayatollahs minimize the damage as there were bloodbaths at protests. The people of Iran now want to bring this Revolutionary Guard Islamic Republic dictatorship to an end, and the US is calling for an intervention a la Venezuela, but anti-Trump feeling means people don't want to see that happen, so they'd actually prefer impunity for murderers, right?
A teraz poprosím kolegu Biela.
Thank you. And next speaker is Mr. Bielan.
Pani Wysoka Przedstawiciel.
President, High Representative, ladies and gentlemen, the situation in Iran is not only about human rights, but also international security, including that of Poland, where I come from. The Ayatollah regime has been a strategic ally of Putin for years. Iranian drones, rocket technology have been supporting the Russian war machine, threatening our borders. This is contrary to the interests of the European Union, and member states should acknowledge that being flexible here is detrimental to our citizens. Now, unfortunately, our sanctions are insufficient, and some countries are still importing Russian raw materials. We're probably witnessing the biggest wave of protests against the governments of the Ayatollahs, of the mullahs. And the regime has conducted repressions, including a mass murder. Thousands of people were killed, including children. I am also worried by attacking Christians in the country. That's why I signed the motion to invite one of the leaders of the opposition, Reza Pahlavi. I would like this motion to be seen positively as soon as possible.
Prosím.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Woutmans, please.
Dear President, dear High Representative, dear colleagues, let us stop pretending we do not see what is coming. The United States will bomb Iran. It's only a matter of time. So the real question is, why is there still no real united European strategy towards Iran? For 3 years we have clung to an appeasement strategy that has achieved nothing. How many more Iranians must be beaten, tortured, executed before we stop acting like passive spectators? The actions we need to take are very clear. List the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization? No. Everybody asked for it. Expand sanctions massively against those who keep the regime alive. Close Iranian embassies across Europe. Recognize the democratic opposition as the only legitimate vote of the Iranian people. Ask for the release of all hostages, including our Professor Jalali. Colleagues, I don't want us to continue to counter that. I want Europe to lead by example. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Saturi, take the floor now.
Since the 8th of January, the Iranian population has been cut off from the world and has been massacred by a theocratic regime which kills, tortures, rapes, and has been doing so for 50 years now. But the population is still rising. The women freedom movement has been active and has a thirst for freedom. But it seems that the regime is wiping its feet on this courage. It seems that nothing is being done to support these brave protesters. They are being crushed by the mullahs regime. We have to support civil society. We have to use the international institutions. We have to convene a meeting of the Security Council. We need to prosecute those responsible. Only the people of Iran can decide on its future. That's valid for Greenland, for Ukraine, for Venezuela, and for Iran.
A teraz poprosím
Thank you. Our next speaker in the debate is Ms. Montero. Please take the floor.
Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, President. High Representative. Trump leaked a private WhatsApp from the French president, which called him my friend. Wants to do great things, apparently, in exchange for getting Greenland. Trump's sons doing deals, oil in Venezuela. You are like Maria Corina Machado. You're being humiliated by him. Bombing and sanctioning Iran is not going to free women. It's going to give oil to Trump. You've learnt nothing from our history. Hitler annexed Austria and occupied the Sudetenland and France. Europeans thought that each step was going to be the last, and he wouldn't continue. That appeasement did not avoid war. Trump is the Hitler of the 21st century. The US should be isolated, and we should not be helping them bomb Iran. We should look at historic agreements that are being signed by Canada, for instance, with China and so on. That's the way forward, not following.
Mr. Vaughan, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, a failed attempt at a color revolution was made in Iran. This technique is all too familiar. Some discontent in society, like the one because of the worsened economic situation in Iran, is used to eliminate a regime that does not please the West. Think of Serbia, Georgia, Russia, Ukraine, and Kyrgyzstan, for instance. Dozens and hundreds of NGOs and media financed by the West are activated for this purpose. The intention is to convince the international public opinion that those in power are very bad guys and they need to be removed from power immediately in the name of democracy and justice, like the armed coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. And the EU leadership applied its double yardstick once again. The same Euro leaders who deplore the internet blackout in the Islamic Republic banned the broadcasting of Russian news media within the territory of the EU. Very principled, isn't it?
From Mr. Sieper. No, sorry. Tak teraz poprosím.
So now the floor goes to Mr. Blaha. Madam Kallas, what are you going to tell us about Iran? You were not able even to say something against the American aggression in Venezuela and removal of President Maduro. With respect to Russia, thousands of sanctions, but American aggression, you propose to increase the consumption of alcohol. Thank you and cheers. When Israel was committing genocide in Gaza, you didn't mind, but now you speak about human rights in Iran. You see how hypocritical you are, and you are the military extremist. You don't have to like what is happening in Iran, but this is a sovereign country, and the economic reasons in Iran are of the same origin than the economic problems of Cuba or Venezuela. Your sanctions, you tied their hands, and now you are laughing into their faces that they can't run. You were the same with Venezuela, so people couldn't care less what you talk about Venezuela, what you say about Venezuela or Greenland. Madam Kallas, the best thing you can do is not to start drinking, but to resign. And now, Mr. Furlas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. High Representative, as a permanent rapporteur for Iran, I would like to point out the following. The price for freedom has already been paid with blood, with the lives of people that went out on the streets to ask for what is self-understandable, freedom, dignity and rights. The regime answered with violence, firing against the protesters by killing thousands of people.
Tens of thousands are in prison only because they raised their voice, daring to ask all what we take for granted. The voice of Iranian people should be heard, should be protected, and should be defended in practice by the EU and international community. There is no room for neutral positions or delays. The EU ought to act immediately with targeted and firm sanctions against the regime that is responsible for the bloodshed and the suppression, with a clear message that barbarity will not remain unpunished. We are on the side and stand by the Iranian people and all those who risk everything for a better tomorrow. Freedom cannot be muzzled, and the sacrifices cannot be forgotten. There is no room to waste. We have to act now. Thank you.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Colleague Attar, the floor is yours.
Not simply unrest, it is systematic repression. Thousands killed, thousands arrested, and the justice system weaponized against its own people. And I have one clear message to the regime in Tehran. Stop hiding behind the claim that this is foreign interference. This is coming from within, from the population, a young population, mostly born after 1979, that no longer accepts fear as a form of governance. Violence is not strength. It is a sign of weakness. Your time is up. This Parliament has spoken enough before. Today we must go further. We want accountability. We want international investigation, sanctions against those responsible, and yes, designating the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. This is long overdue. Action and not words. To the people of Iran, Kurds, Azeris, Arabs, Turkmens, Persians, Baha'is, Baluchis, the future of Iran belongs to you. Women, life and freedom.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Madam Andriessen, the floor is yours.
Voorzitter. Thank you, President. The Iranian people is absolutely sick of Islamist tyranny. After decades of repression, they have had enough of a regime which is trying to repress its people and succeeding in repressing its people with violence. There's no freedom for women. They're deprived of all their rights. The opposition is repressed. Anybody who takes freedom seriously cannot possibly condone such a state continuing to function in anything resembling this way. This means we need to close embassies, we need to expel diplomats, and we need to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. A free Iran is essential for the Iranian people, but it is equally essential for the continued existence of free societies. Thank you.
Do you accept the blue card from Mr. Mularczyk? No. Okay. Takže ako ďalšie poprosím.
Okay, then the next speaker is Mr. Tinikin.
Dear President, the Iranians have risen up bravely against their torturers. For 46 years, the nation has been occupied by an Islamist dictatorship. They've been brutalized, murdered, and for too long have their cries gone unheard. Not anymore. What we are seeing in Iran is a revolution that will change the world. Also, the EU needs to act swiftly. Stop the appeasement policy, tighten sanctions, and isolate the regime that executes its own people. Proscribe the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. Stop the trade with Iran. Listen to the Iranian people and invite Mr. Reza Pahlavi to address the parliament, the man whose name the people chant in the streets of Iran. Coordinate attacks with the US to weaken the regime to collapse. We can either forever be seen as traitors and hypocrites, or we can help the Iranians rid themselves of this regime. Thank you.
And now, Madame Loiseau, the floor is yours.
Madame la Haute Représentante.
High Representative, the Iranian regime has quite a brutal past, repressing hope. Hamas, Hezbollah and others are attacking Israel, developing a clandestine nuclear program, supporting Russia in Ukraine and cyber attacks in Europe. So We have seen true butchery now. Mullahs who are unable to offer a future to their people have been firing on their own people. Terror reigns in Tehran. And yet there are still countries in Europe, such as my own, which hesitate to classify the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organisation. What are they waiting for? A coup to save their own backsides and then enjoying this impunity when Trump has forgotten about Iran and abandoned demonstrators to their fate. What can we do to ensure that the butchers of Tehran feel the pressure mounting and do not enjoy impunity?
Thank you. Madam Kunke, the floor is yours.
Nobody should have to open body bag after body bag, hundreds and hundreds of body bags to find their dead brother or sister. Nobody should be shot on the open streets or tortured to death for simply dreaming of freedom. The crisis is being paid for by Iran's courageous population. There are many Swedish Iranians who have not managed to get in touch with their nearest and dearest. If you want to use violence and weapons to constrain freedom, there are plenty of those out there, but we will not be silent. We will not stop supporting those who fight for freedom. We can hear you, we see you, we are with you, and Europe has to go from words to deeds. Life and freedom to the Iranian people.
Thank you. Madam Gedin, the floor is yours.
In a world where fascism is on the rise and where the strongest set the rules, the Iranian population's struggle is incredibly important. I tell my children, look at the people out on Iran's streets. From Tehran to Isfahan, they have got the courage to stand up to repression. They are fighting for their freedom. Our solidarity is just fine words, it seems. What we need, rather, are sanctions against the leaders with blood on their hands. The murderers in the Iranian Revolutionary Guards have to be listed as terrorists, and the EU has to work to find stable forms of communication with the country. For those who have lost their nearest and dearest, we can see you, we hear you, we are part of this battle with you until your freedom is not just a dream. We dream with you. The regime will fall.
Thank you. Mr. Papadakis, the floor is yours.
We condemn the threats by the US and Israel that are a preparation for new operations against Iran. This is a continuation of the previous bombings of Iran, as well as the operations in Greenland, Mexico, and elsewhere. The Iranian people are fighting for their rights against their government and the capitalist status in Iran, the government that is shooting the protesters and has forbidden the Communist Party in Iran, against the Greek government, the EU and NATO, that at the same time are in favor of the Taliban in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, the jihadis in Syria, trample all over human rights. They are in favor of the State of Israel and the murderer Netanyahu, but we are in solidarity with the Iranian people. It is their sole responsibility to define their future.
Madam Junkevičian.
full scale and brutality of the crime committed against its own people by the Iranian regime. It is possible that people are being killed there even as we speak. I support the EPP call on the Council to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization and demand the immediate adoption of further sanctions against the regime. I have great respect for the brave people of Iran. I have lived under a dictatorship of communism, and I know that for thousands of people taking to the streets is an almost impossible mission. But the brave Iranians did it. Despite the terrible tragedy that he has secured, the regime's time is coming to an end. But there remains great bitterness about the actions of the US President. After encouraging protest, he suddenly backed down. This was a mistake. The fighting Iranian people truly deserve much greater support from all of us.
Thank you. Madam Insir, the floor is yours.
There is no force more powerful than a united people who refuse to kneel. From the streets of Tehran to the plains of Fars, from Kurdistan's mountains to Baluchistan's shores, from Khorasan to Azerbaijan's province, the entire country is standing up. This brutal Islamic regime must not be managed, negotiated with, or normalized. It must be ended. Casting it into the dustbin of history must be our shared responsibility. To the Commission, what are you waiting for? Label IRGC as a terrorist organization, throw out Iranian diplomats out of the EU, sanction the mullahs and support the opposition. Condemnations without real words are meaningless. Act now. And to those who are exhausted, wounded and grieving, we are with you. The day is coming when the prisons are silent, when the streets belong to the people, when children learn the name of the tyrants, the mullahs, only in the history books. Justice will prevail, dignity will be restored, and Iran will once for all stand in freedom and equality for its whole population. Rich, poor, middle class, Persian, Kurds, Baluchis, Baha'is, Azeris, Arabs, and all others.
Thank you. Madam Latino Popula, the floor is yours.
The Islamic regime in Iran puts anyone that disagrees with them into jail or tortures them, women, journalists, and they are in danger. They are in danger along with freedom and democracy. However, Europe is silent. There are no demonstrations for women without burqa. Where is Greta? Where are the demonstrations outside the Iranian embassies? Where is Mrs. Perka, Mr. Apostolopoulos, all those people that went on TV? Where are the Free Palestine movement? Cat got their tongue. Is it because the petrodollars of Iran are flowing freely? They do not want to disagree with Turkey and Qatar, or are they just hypocrites? Let us not forget that the European and especially the French left had welcomed Ayatollah Khomeini and the overthrow of the Shah. And what is the result? Iran has gone 100 years into the past. So, in Iran, we can see once more that the left is the cancer of Europe. They are not with the weak, they are not with the women, they are only with anything that serves their ideology. And those dead do not serve their ideology, so they might as well die. You don't care at all.
Thank you. Mr. Kallas, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, the protests in Iran have been bloodily suppressed. Security forces cleared the streets with live fire, mass arrests and internet blackouts. And no one knows how many thousands have been killed. Families are forced to pay the regime to recover the bodies of their massacred children. This is how the Islamic Republic maintains control. Over the years, the EU has engaged with those responsible for these atrocities. Senior diplomats attended presidential inaugurations. Condolences were issued when the butcher of Tehran died. These were conscious political decisions that granted the regime international legitimacy while it shot its own citizens. We sanctioned individuals and kept treating a regime that arms Russia's war against Ukraine and plots assassinations on Europe's soil as a partner. The IRGC is the center of this system of repression and global terror. The legal basis to designate it as a terrorist organization is settled and has existed for years, and the Parliament has demanded it for years. The Council meets this Thursday. There is time for one more decision. Stop bidding for time, designate IRGC now, and High Commissioner, please do name those member states who still resist this decision. Thank you.
Danke, und jetzt würde ich der Kollege Brandstätter bitten.
Hi, Commissioner, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Colleagues, we've heard some horrendous figures, 20,000 dead, many people injured, and we have heard time and time again today that the terrorist regime is continuing its murderous practices. We do need to look reality in the face. This regime has lost the trust of people. They are no longer fearful of taking to the streets, and this is why we need to support them ever more in numerous different ways. We're often asked, why are we concerned about Iran? Well, for many reasons, because we realise that they are victims, because they and we are victims of cyber attacks, because many Iranians live here. They're an integral part of our society, and that's important because we stand up for human rights, and because we believe in certain principles, and because we are realistic and we realise that we need to support the opposition, that dialogue has got to continue, and that we need to invite the opposition to come and meet with us about what sort of support they further need.
I have a point of order from Mr. Botenga.
Yes, just it might have been an interpretation problem, but I heard colleague Latinopoulou claim that the left was a cancer for Europe. I would like to have an investigation into these words, because I think that's absolutely inappropriate language not to be used. So I would like to submit this to the presidency, because if there's one problem in Europe, it's been their complicity with Israeli crimes in Gaza, and not the solidarity we have here with all the people, but it's mostly about the formal language. This cannot pass in this parliament. We cannot treat each other this way, and we will not stand for this kind of fascist intimidation. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. The services will look into this, and yes, I would like to remind the colleagues that indeed they should stick to the rules of procedure, and I would like to specifically point out the rule number 10 about the way and the content of your speeches. And now let me give the floor to Madam Camara, please.
Chers collègues,
Colleagues, a revolution is being bloodily repressed in Iran right now. There are corpses piled up outside the morgues. There are terrible scenes, which are not new. The mullah's reposition has been in place since 1979. Women Freedom 2022 and also 2019 and also 2009. We've never forgotten the courage of the people of Iran, despite murders, executions, threats. One thing is sure. You cannot govern eternally through fear. Those who respect liberty, dignity, civil society, women refusing to accept the patriarchal rules of this clerical dictatorship, protecting these rights and ensuring that asylum can be granted to those who are in danger is the way forward. We got a video from a demonstrator with a bloody mouth saying, "I'm not afraid. I've been dead for 43 years." For her and for everyone else, let us support a democratic future for Iran without Shah's dictatorship and without the mullahs.
Thank you. Our next speaker is our colleague Wisler Lima.
the people of Iran, I wanted to begin with those words. The people of Iran, they are giving a message to the world. They are admirable, fighting for their freedom, knowing the risks, knowing many will die. They are fighting, putting freedom above their security, above their own lives. We should hear this message, here where so many of us take for granted the freedom brave Iranians are fighting for, risking everything. It is a message of hope. They believe, and it is the message that freedom is invaluable. The least the European Union can do is to stand with the Iranian people. We have to put pressure on this government, sanction the regime, and designate the IRCG as a terrorist organization. Dear Iranians, you who are fighting for freedom, we stand with you. Thank you.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegy.
Thank you. Please, Ms. Yalul Muro, you're the next speaker.
Thank you. 3 weeks ago, the Iranian people rose up against inequality, poverty, isolation and injustice with one single demand, their freedom. Today, Europe must look at Iran with empathy and humanity. We see merchants, students and women in the street, the same women who show that dignity cannot be imprisoned. Young people who did not choose this regime, but who still have the right to choose their future. And certainly it's not the Shah, but free elections. We condemn the mass arrest, violence and thousands of killed. We condemn the Iranian regime support to Hezbollah and the Houthis. From Europe, we must speak with absolute clarity. We stand with the Iranian people. We demand the immediate release of all those detained for exercising their fundamental rights, the designation of Islamic Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, and to extend EU sanctions to its member. And foremost and most important, last but not least, avoid double standards with other country situations. Thank you.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegyňu Sardone.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to Ms. Sardone.
Il popolo iraniano.
Thank you. The Iranian people is calling for help, but the Europeans are not even courageous enough to denounce the regime in Tehran openly. This is absolutely shameful. You won't speak the truth. You won't admit that this is an Islamist dictatorship. During the protests, women took off their veils, which they're obliged to wear by the regime. And I ask you, women on the left, where are you? Your silence is deafening. It is absolutely shameful that the European Union is identifying the veil as some kind of symbol or integration in society. Millions of people are risking their lives. Millions of people have been arrested. The Iranians are begging for freedom. They want the Ayatollah regime to fall. They reject Sharia law. They are desperate not to be left alone, to be abandoned. Their battle must be our battle. Europe must have the courage of its convictions, and it has to join in the battle for their freedom. Thank you.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Weimers.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Weimers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. High Representative Kallas, as the courage of the Iranian people ignites the streets, the EU must match their fire with bold action. Declare the regime illegitimate now. Brand the IRGC as the terrorists that they are. Enforce sanctions on Iranian oil as stringently as those on Russian oil. Seize every regime asset in Europe. Cripple their internal networks and silence their propaganda machine. Shut down every Islamic Republic embassy on European soil. Turn them into relics of a dying dictatorship until the lion and sun flag can be raised. And while it's up to the Iranian people and not us to elect their leaders, I implore you, High Representative, to listen to the chants on the streets of Iran. Yavid Shah, long live the king, is what they chant all across the country. And it's time for you to invite the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to Brussels as the leader of the opposition that he is. Thank you.
Will you accept the blue card from Mr. Oliveira? Yeah. Interpretation, yes. It's there. Just set up the language.
Thank you very much. President, Mr. Weimers, you just made a speech defending all of the different means for combating Iran. But that means you've got complicity with the Israeli bombs on Iran and also complicity with the attack that seems to be imminent from the USA and Israel. So the question for you is that, do you really believe that it's possible to build a democracy on the basis of bombs and military attacks and aggression on foreign countries? Is that really your idea of democracy?
I support targeted attacks against the IRGC leadership. Yes, I do. Why? Because it would take out the leadership of an organization that kills thousands and thousands of Iranians. So my question to you would be, why do you want to protect these murderers? Why don't you join us in condemning the Islamic regime and show the Iranian people as much compassion as you apparently show the Palestinian people? Why do you not care now?
A teraz poprosím kolegu Auštrevičius.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to Mr. Auštrevičius.
Mr. Chair, dear High Representative, colleagues, for 5 decades, Iran has been ruled by religious fanatism. During this time, Mullah's regime has engaged in the endless repression of internal opponents and Iranian demanding change. It has also supported international terrorism and partnered with totalitarian regimes. Ayatollah Khomeini's vision for Iran has resulted in endless death sentences, crackdown on women's rights, a deteriorating quality of life and internal isolation. Ayatollah's Iran offers no future. The EU has been unjustifiably slow to adopt a firm political stance on Iran. The Iranian people must feel the impact of economic sanctions as soon as possible. Those responsible for repression must be persecuted and punished. The Iranian people, not mullahs, neither former Shah family, have the right for political change and self-determination. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A teraz poprosím kolegu Pasqua.
Thank you. Mr. Pascual de la Parte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. 3,000 dead, 20,000 injured, thousands and thousands of people in jail. We don't know actually the figures of the massacre of the Iranian people by the regime. We cannot turn a blind eye of that. We have to cry. We have to support the Iranian people as they deserve. What can we do? We can do still a lot of things, and I think that we should proceed ahead very quickly. First, we have to review all the instruments we have at our disposal, whether the sanctions of the United Nations, our own sanctions concerning commerce, trade, financial services, reassurance, energy, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, to designate once and for all the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as an international terrorist group. There is no delay, no more excuses not to do it, as is the case of the government of my own country. And in addition to this, to remember that every barrel of oil sold means a bullet to kill the Iranian people. And that's why we have to put a stop to that. We stand by the Iranian people. The Iranian people will prevail. Long live to the Iranian people.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Mr. Assis, the floor is yours.
High Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, this is an extraordinary example of how a country with an extraordinarily rich cultural heritage can be destroyed by extreme religious views. A theocratic state has been violent, and the Ayatollahs have tyrannized the people. They have been demonstrating against this regime now and calling for freedom. That desire for freedom, which many people, especially young people, have been taking forward on the streets. In many cases, tragically, they have paid with their lives. And we now have to give a message to Tehran from the whole of the rest of the world that you have the right to aspire for a future without violence, and we will be on your side unconditionally, the side of the people of Iran. The EU needs to recognize the legitimacy of the democratic opposition to the theocratic regime, and we must engage in dialogue with them to open up a new chapter of this wonderful country.
Thank you. Madam Bonte, the floor is yours.
Dank u, voorzitter. Mevrouw Kallas.
Thank you very much, President. Ms. Kallas, colleagues, what is happening in Iran today leaves no further scope for diplomatic circumlocutions. We see absolutely mass arrests, vile and brutal torture perpetrated against their own people. This is a regime which is responsible, as I've just said, for huge numbers of arrests, vile and brutal torture, murderous violence, terror instruments being used against their own people. The European Union still fails to put this organisation on the list of banned organisations and designate it as a terrorist organisation. This means that its networks and its financial resources in Europe remain. There are no more excuses. Europe has got to stand up and be counted. We can't simply continue with empty declarations. We need to stand up and be counted and act. That's the only way we can really help the people. Thank you.
Mr. Gambino, the floor is yours.
President, colleagues, in Iran right now there's brutal repression of the people who are calling for freedom. There are peaceful demonstrations that have been repressed by force, mass arrests, threats of death sentences, unprecedented blackouts to hide the truth. It's not a one-off excess, it is a deliberate strategy by the regime. The EU cannot afford to be ambiguous on this. It is a test for our credibility. You cannot have stability without freedom. You cannot have dialogue without respect for human dignity. There are clear choices to be made. Strengthening targeted sanctions against those responsible for repression, coordination with G7 partners to allow us to keep the political pressure up. We also need to support the gathering of evidence of human rights violations so that no one can feel they are beyond the law. The EU needs to be unstintingly at the side of the people of Iran.
And I'm not going to be taking 2 blue cards from one MEP. Sorry for that. I would love to, but we are really badly behind time, so I hope you can understand. I love a good debate, but also have to make sure that we fit within the time. A teraz poprosím paní kolegyni.
And now, Madam Al-Salani, the floor is yours.
Women, life, freedom, 3 words that shook the world. Today they echo again through the courage of the Iranian people who are fighting on the streets. And yet we as Europeans have not raised to their courage as we did before. Am I angry with the grey, half-hearted statements by the European Union? No, I am profoundly furious. Be concrete. Offer humanitarian visas for activists, break the internet blockade, designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization, engage with the democratic opposition in Iran to facilitate democratic transition, and invoke responsibility to protect with the UN Security Council. These are not radical demands, they are our obligations, because history will not judge us by our statements, but by whether we stood with courage or hid behind procedure while people were killed, because silence kills also. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Madam Zovko, the floor is yours.
President, Madam High Representative, today we cannot remain silent in the face of one of the gravest human rights crises unfolding in the world right now. In Iran, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets, driven by economic despair, political repression and the struggling for dignity and freedom. Protests have spread across the whole country. The Iranian authorities have responded with brutal repression. Shoot to kill orders, mass arrests and devastating death toll, and a total internet blackout intended to hide violations from the world. Women, young people and journalists are being targeted simply for demanding freedom and dignity. Europe cannot remain passive, and I call the European Commission and High Representative to act decisively and introduce the full designation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a terrorist organisation, hold perpetrators accountable and demand the immediate release of all detained protesters. In addition, ensure unhindered access for families and provide secure communication tools to those at risk. The courage of Iranian people is extraordinary. Europe must respond with clear, united and credible stance. Thank you.
Ďakujem. And now would the Vice-Präsidentin, Madame Barley, bitten.
Vielen Dank. Seit Jahrzehnten. Thank you. For decades, Iranians have been risking their lives for freedom, self-determination and dignity. The battle that women have been fighting for their basic rights was at the origin of many of these protests. Recently, the Iranian regime closed down the internet completely, and the news coming out of Iran has been very sparse. But we know that thousands and thousands of people have been both murdered and injured. We know that protesters and vulnerable people, completely unarmed and unprotected, have been killed for many years. We need to take political action. We need to protect the people in Iran. We need to listen to them, and we need to put an end to this brutal repression. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has got to be designated as a terrorist organisation. This would not just be symbolic, it would have economic consequences too, and it would actually curb the violence. It would curb their resources. We need to stand up and be counted. We need to give the Iranians a voice. We need to make ourselves visible for women, for Iran.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Guérin.
En Iran, un peuple courageux se dresse contre une...
In Iran, a courageous people is standing up against a violent dictatorship. Men and women are standing up at the risking their deaths for freedom. Faced with their demands, the mullahs have only one response: terror. Thousands of Iranians are now being massacred. And during this time, Europe is not reacting. Its diplomacy has failed. It ends up allowing this regime to finance terror even on our own territory. It's important that we should give support to the resistance. We need to help to re-establish the internet services, to break the silence so that the world can see the battle that is being fought by the people. Supporting democracy in Iran is a moral and strategic imperative. It's important for our collective security. The Patriots Group has always stood and continues to stand with the Iranian people. We refuse the complicity of silence, and we want to stand up clearly in favour of freedom.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Vercionová.
Dobrý den, děkuji za slovo, pane předsedající.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the floor. Dear Chair, dear High Representative, dear colleagues. For decades, the Iranian people have been repressed by a cruel Islamist dictatorship. In the last few years, there were several protests that were brutally suppressed by the ruling regime. Thousands have been shot in the streets of Iranian cities or later in the infamous prisons of the Revolutionary Guards. And despite that, ordinary people do not lose hope for a better future for themselves and their children. A future without repression, without religious radicalism, without the corrupt elites. A regime that is disintegrating Iran to enrich themselves and to spread radicalism and violence all over the Near East. I commend the bravery of the people in Iranian streets. Their determination is an example for us all. All the more it is tragic to look at the leftist activists here in Europe. They always talk about humanity and human rights, but now their silence is really very loud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guetta. Please take the floor as next speaker.
Dos au mur, ils ont tué.
They killed thousands and thousands of people with their backs to the wall. No allies left. The Russians are too busy killing Ukrainians. Within the region, there are no allies left. They're humiliated by their impotence compared to Israel, the US. Now, they can only think on what Talleyrand said, that you can do anything with a bayonet except sit down on it. And pillars of democracy, so-called, have said that there is a hope now. Deng Xiaoping talking about a wild capitalism as a new way to be born from the ashes. Others seeing Donald Trump as the hope, money, oil, flattery of a courtesan being the order of the day. But the death continues. Wild, savage killing. But the regime is nearly over. It is financially exhausted, so its days are numbered.
Thank you. Ms. Bentele is our next speaker. Please take the floor.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Colleagues, 3 points on Iran. First of all, credibility. It is absolutely not possible that there are only 10 member states which are prepared to designate the RGG as terrorists. There have been 10,000 people murdered at least. Surely that is argument enough to designate this organisation shooting on its own people as terrorists. Second, honestly, we do need to review our sanctions and see whether they're working, see where we can tweak them and see where we can increase the pressure on the regime. We need to manage expectations. That's my third point. We need to have much better organisation with the opposition. We need to support the opposition within the country. The US and Israel have their own angles and their own views on sustainability of the regime and regime change. The EU has got to support democracy, and it's not even contributing a satellite link. Therefore, colleagues, vigilance and support. This is what we owe the Iranian people.
Thank you. Mr. Glucksmann, please take the floor.
Colleagues, let's not forget the Iranian people. Let's not forget its courage or its suffering. The regime wants to massacre them behind closed doors and turn the country into a huge graveyard. The dictatorship wants to smother this voice. Let's put the Revolutionary Guards on the list of terrorist organizations of the EU. Since January 2023, this has been on the agenda, but it still hasn't been done. 3 years. Some countries are still blocking that, including my own, France. Let's say it loud and clear. That is shameful. This has to be changed immediately. Yes, the Revolutionary Guards are terrorists. They're terrorists in Iran, they're terrorists across the whole region, and they are terrorists on European soil too. Our message to European governments is simple. Enough passiveness, enough softness, enough laziness. Let's help the Iranian people to live freely by putting sanctions on their torturers and put the Revolutionary Guards on the list of European terrorist groups. Thank you.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to Ms. Maréchal.
Aujourd'hui, des Iraniens meurent car
Iranians are dying today, aspiring for dignity and freedom. We should be at their side. They're wonderful people, one of the most ancient people in the world, but since 1979 they have had to undergo something which is not fitting to their history. Sad development with the help of the European left, especially the French left, Sartre of Foucault, Islamo-leftism, supporting Ayatollah Khomeini, who was exiled in France for a long time, giving propaganda to his little green book. There's also the little black book of the left-wing complicity in the rise of Islamism, Muslim Brotherhood and others. The Middle East and Europe need Iran as a partner, a reasonable Iran, which is not using Shia faith to connect with others, to spread chaos throughout the region. Let us very much hope that the charm of the rose of Persian poetry will return soon.
No, sorry. A teraz by som
I now pass the floor to Ms. Esther Sferagut.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Over the last few weeks, we've seen people across Iran calling for a future of dignity, justice and freedom. The tyrannic regime responded with killing thousands and torturing many and everything else that everyone knows. But let's spare a thought for women. They were on the front line and they are also targeted by the oppressors. Ammar Shamini, for instance, should be recalled. They want to stand up for their rights. Gender violence is deeply anchored there. There are forced early marriages. Women earn a fifth of what men do. They don't have a right to inheritance, political rights. They don't have control over their own clothing from the age of 9. Gay people are hanged. There is a need to speak out. We can't be silent. Some on the left put ideology before the need to clearly condemn the regime. Defence of human rights cannot be à la carte, I say to the left.
Teraz poprosím kolegu Van Dijk.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to Mr. Van Dijk.
Thank you. Commissioner, what began in Iran as protests born of economic desperation has now grown to nationwide protests against decades of repression. The opposition has taken to the street in hundreds of towns, and now the Revolutionary Guard, which we should years ago have banned as a terrorist organisation, is responding by closing down communication and the internet. Thousands of people have been killed. Thousands have been arrested. The prisons are overflowing. Some of the prisoners are European, like Professor Jalali. But the courage of the Iranians cannot be crushed. They continue to fight today. They continue to fight for a democratic republic, which is based on free elections, the right to vote, separation between church and state, equality between men and women, respect for minorities, a peaceful foreign policy, and a peaceful future for a nuclear-free Iran. This country has got to be allowed to have free elections to achieve the future that it wants, and the implications for us are that we have to stop turning a blind eye to what's going on. It's not that difficult to stand.
Thank you. I now pass the floor to Mr. Vice President Kovachev.
Madam High Representative, Iranian women and men are out of the streets demanding freedom, democracy and dignity. Against the oppressive regime of the mullahs, they deserve not only our solidarity, but decisive actions. Stop executions, release all political prisoners, restore full internet access. Immediately, Madam High Representative, designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. This regime's main instrument of terror cannot continue to operate without impunity. This regime must be held accountable for the estimated death of over 3,000 protesters and 50,000 arrested, according to local sources. Finally, the EU must support all credible Iranian resistance groups inside and outside Iran to ensure a smooth transition to a democratic, pluralistic and secular society model. The Iranian people are not alone. Europe must stand firmly on the side of freedom. Long live free, democratic and secular Iran.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Bellamy. Please take the floor.
Monsieur le Président, Madame la Haute Représentante.
President, High Representative, how many are they? Thousands. Thousands of Iranians murdered, men, women, children, all too many. And just because the regime that oppresses them has decided that will only survive through terror and a mixture of inaction in Europe, inaction from the extreme left, who have always been on the side of the executioners of the Iranian people since the revolution. And I mean, one of the main lobbyists for the Iranian regime is Rima Hassan, a member of your own group. A huge majority of this parliament has called for the Revolutionary Guards to be classified as a terrorist organisation, but there are still countries against that. France, Spain, Italy. Why? Clearly, we're talking about a terrorist organisation which not only oppresses the Iranian people, but the whole region. If this regime falls, colleagues, This will be good for the whole region and beyond. It's a new fall of the Berlin Wall, and we have to support the Iranian people.
Me? Will you accept the blue card from Mr. Botenga?
Merci. Je pense que la question n'est pas...
Now, I think the question is not, do we have solidarity with the Iranian people, yes or no? We all have solidarity, including the left. Your remarks on that front are not true. Admit it. And the real question is, why are you now worried about Iranians being killed? You're worried about it, but you weren't worried a year ago when it was the Israelis doing the killing. It seems you have no problem leaving the Palestinians to be massacred. That's the double standard, sir.
La question, Monsieur Botenga, c'est, en effet...
Well, the question, Mr. Botenga, is, are we really showing solidarity with the Iranian people? Supporting this regime is endangering the Iranian regime. So you've supported Hamas, which is an ally of Iran. You supported Hezbollah, which is an ally of Iran. You supported all of these militias that are now working with Iran to destroy the whole of the Middle East. So we have to fight against political Islam, and that's something the extreme left is not prepared to do.
And this concludes the listed speakers. Now we come to the KHI, and I have to say it was not easy, but because really we are running out of the time, I'm only able to take one per group, and we start with Madame Theodorescu-Mav.
Thank you very much, President. Well, a historic revolution is taking place in Iran against a despotic regime. There's a possibility to transform the whole of the Middle East, the same kind of effect that the Berlin Wall's fall had on Europe. However, there is silence from the part-time humanists in the anti-Semitic left in Europe who support Hamas and stand behind the regime which the Iranians are now losing their lives fighting. The EU has to go beyond solemn words and use all tools available to support the Iranians in the field. They have to break diplomatic ties with the regime, throw out Iranian diplomats, class the Revolutionary Guards as terrorists, and restore internet connections. It's not the time to hold our breath now. Now it's time to act. Down with the mullahs.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez Aguilar is the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. High Rep Kaja Kallas. Muchos aquí rechazamos la
Many of us here reject foreign interference in Venezuela because it runs counter to international law. For the same reason, we could not support such an intervention in Iran. But that doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean impotence. Any sanctions which are available to us remove the obstacles, provide support to the demonstrators, to brave women, young, rebellious people who are standing up to the Ayatollahs, bring European diplomacy, the EEAS and member states' diplomatic services to bear to try to help Iran on a human rights basis rather than a worrying about oil basis, because it is those double standards that cause a problem when people look to us. They want us to show some kind of commitment because of this brutal repression by the Ayatollah's regime.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Čičoliho, nech sa páči.
Mr. Veshali is the next speaker.
No? Mr. Ciccioli, the floor is yours.
Sì, non ripeterò ovviamente.
Thank you. I obviously won't rehearse many of the arguments that have been made today. I would just like to say that the hours are numbered for the regime. There are protests underway, yes, but there's also a real revolution taking place. We need to remember that this regime emerged from a revolution in 1979 against the Shah, who was accused of many things, and it then led to the elimination of a large number of the political participants in society, Mujahideen and many others who had been active previously. There have been 130,000 executions at least. every single year there have been thousands, and in the good years there's maybe only been 1,000, and in the worst years 4,000 or 5,000. Military militia and a civilian militia, Bashir, are in control of the country. Last Parliament, Mr. Vidal Quadros was the victim of an attempted assassination by these paramilitaries. Peaceful attempts have been made to change the regime in the interim, but I think that it is high time.
A teraz poprosím paní kolegyni.
Ms. Vries is our next speaker.
Do not forget the name of Gina Masha Amini. Remember woman life freedom, a fight that must not fade away. The Iranian regime's surge in death penalty executions and brutal abuses against peaceful protesters cannot stand. Iran's ayatollahs gun down children and raid hospitals because a whole nation is rising. It's making Tehran tremble. A generation is fighting for their future. And right now the regime is testing whether the world will blink. And that's why Europe must show unbreakable solidarity, support the brave citizens, strengthen regime sanctions, support Iranian civil society, media and connectivity partners. We need clear EU action. We need to empower protesters against tyranny, for women, for life and for freedom.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Guarda.
Thank you very much, President. The Iranian embassies in Europe are writing threats to Iranian citizens in Europe to ensure their silence. No one should talk about what's going on to young men and women and children killed by terrorist groups. Meloni's government in Italy, well, they don't seem to see them as criminals. Netanyahu isn't seen as a criminal either. But 12,000 have been killed. Defending the freedom of expression and calling an end to the killings is a moral duty.
Teraz poprosím.
Thank you, Mr. Sarama. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, Iranians have waited for freedom way too long. Dissatisfaction is not limited to poverty and bazaars. In the streets, women and the younger generation demand a dignified life. The more the leaders fear their own people, the more horrible their actions become. We can no longer wait and watch all this from the sidelines. The brave people in the streets, they deserve our full support. All my life, Iranians have been under a religious conservative tyranny. Democracy was stolen from them even earlier in a coup supported by the US and Britain over 70 years ago. But it's not about us, not Israel, Russia or the United States. We must support the Iranian people without economic or geopolitical goals, but because the Iranian people deserve freedom. Sanctions for leaders are needed, and the Revolutionary Guard must be declared a terrorist organization.
And now, to close the Catch the Eye, Mr. Sieper, the floor is yours.
Liebe Menschen Europas, viele unserer Kolleginnen und Kollegen haben.
The people of Europe, and indeed many here, have talked about sanctions, about banning the IRGC. I absolutely agree with that. These are all important, but the most important is to support the opposition, to support civil society. At this point, we have to pause and reflect. Who are we supporting, though? This is the issue. We need to identify who we could be supporting, who could potentially be a successor to the mullahs. And I think it would be a major error were we to support the monarchists. You can't just support the son of a father who was responsible for what he was responsible for. You can't just have a restoration of a Persian monarchy which repressed the rights of the minorities. There are mujahideens who are actually sects and well connected here. They've been responsible for mass attacks and atrocities in recent decades. they are designated enemies. We can't be supporting them either. Therefore, the conclusion is that we support the Iranian people themselves and we support them to achieve elections as soon as possible. Thank you.
And that concludes Catch the Eye, and I'm again sorry to all the colleagues who actually spent the debate here and were hoping to have a spot, but indeed we are running late, and hence I had to be selective and try to take only the first ones who ask for the floor. Now, to conclude this debate, let me give the floor to the High Representative Kaja Kallas to speak on behalf of Commission and Council. Please, Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear President, honourable members, today's debate shows a clear and shared determination to respond promptly and decisively to the Iranian authorities' unacceptable crackdown on fundamental rights and freedoms and on the lives of many innocent Iranians. I hear your concerns, I also hear your criticism, and I hear your calls for decisive EU response. We aim for concrete announcements at the next Foreign Affairs Council that is happening next week, and also designating Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization is on the table. We don't have everybody on board with member states yet on this, and to be very clear, we have sanctioned the Revolutionary Guard already heavily now, but the question is about also designating them as a revolutionary, as a terrorist organization. Silence or inaction is not an option, I agree with you, and that's why we haven't been silent, we haven't been inactive. Maintaining open channels with Iran also must remain part of our toolbox to safeguard our interests and to enable engagement when it's required. In this context, I think in particular of European citizens that have been detained in Iran and of the many political activists who count on our support. And the EU and its member states will continue to send strong and clear messages to Iran. There will be zero tolerance for abuses and violations of human rights by the Iranian authorities. The current round of protests is all but over, but the authorities cannot kill the people's demands for change forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This closes the debate according to Article 251, Para 4. I would like to inform you that there were no motions for voting for corrigendum. It wasn't announced on Monday, on 19th of January. Therefore, the corrigendum is considered to be approved, and it will be published on our website. The next item is the statement of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy situation in Venezuela following the extraction of Maduro and the need to ensure peaceful